Strategy 20. Maneuver them into weakness. The ripening for the sickle strategy. No matter how strong you are, fighting endless battles is tiresome and exhausting, costly and unimaginative. Wise strategists generally prefer the art of maneuver. Before the battle even begins, they find ways to put the opponents in difficult positions of such weakness that victory is efficient and quick. Bait enemies into taking positions that might seem alluring, but are actually dead alleys, traps. If their position is strong, get them to abandon it by leading them on a wild goose chase. Create dilemmas, devise maneuvers that give them a choice, all of them which bad to respond. Channel chaos and disorder into their direction. Confused, frustrated enemies and angry opponents are like ripe fruit on the bough. The slightest breeze will make them fall. Throughout history, two distinct styles of warfare can be identified. The most ancient is the war of attrition. An enemy is surrendered because you have annihilated so many of its men. A general fighting a war of attrition will calculate ways to overwhelm the other side with larger numbers, or with the basic formation that will do the most damage, or with the most superior technology. In any event, victory depends on wearing down the other side in battle. Even with today's extraordinary technology, attrition warfare is remarkably unsophisticated, playing into humanity's most violent instincts. Over the centuries, a second method of waging war developed. The emphasis here was not on destroying the other side in battle, but weakening and unbalancing it before the battle even began. The leader would maneuver to confuse and infuriate, and now put the enemy in a bad position, having to fight uphill or with the sun or wind in his face, could be more effective than one with muscle. The leader would maneuver to confuse and infuriate and put the enemy in a dreadful position. Therefore, in a cramped space, in this kind of war, an army with mobility, maneuver, could be more effective than one, obviously, with muscle. The maneuver warfare philosophy was codified by Sun Tzu in his Art of War, written in the 5th century, over 200 years ago. But through adroit maneuvering, a state could spare itself such high costs and emerge victorious. An enemy who had been maneuvered into a weak position would succumb more easily to psychological pressure. Even before the battle had begun, it had imperceptibly started to collapse and would surrender with less of a fight. Psychological pressure would get to them. Several strategists, notably Napoleon Bonaparte, have made brilliant use of maneuver warfare. But in general, attrition warfare is deeply ingrained in Western way of thinking, from the ancient Greeks to modern America. In an attrition culture, thoughts naturally gravitate toward how to overpower problems, obstacles, those who resist us. You see, people are drawn to the emotional and dramatic quality in any confrontation, not the many steps that lead to such a confrontation. The stories that are told in such cultures are all geared towards such battle-like moments, a morale message preached through the ending as opposed to the more telling details. On top of it all, this way of fighting is deemed more manly, honourable, honest. More than anything, maneuver, war, is a different way of thinking. What matters here is the process, the steps towards battle, and how to manipulate them to make the confrontation less costly and violent. In the maneuver universe, nothing is static. Battles are in fact dramatic illusions, short moments in a larger flow of events, which is fluid, dynamic, and susceptible to alteration through careful strategy. This way of thinking finds no honor whatsoever. It's not a man's war, or morality in wasting time, energy, and lives in battles. Instead, wars of attrition are seen as lazy, reflecting the primitive's human tendency to fight back reactively without thinking. In a society full of attrition, fighters, you will gain an instant advantage by converting to maneuver. Your thought processes will become more fluid on the other side of life, and you will be able to thrive off the rigid, battle-obsessed tendencies of the people around you by always thinking first about the overall situation and about how to maneuver people into positions of weakness rather than fight them. You will make your battles less bloody, which, since life is long and conflict is endless, is wise if you want a fruitful and enduring career. And a war of maneuver is just as decisive as a war of attrition. Think of weakening your enemies as ripening them like grain, ready to be cut down at the right moment. Craft a plan with branches. Maneuver warfare depends on planning, and the plan has to be right. Too rigid, and you leave yourself no room to maneuver or adjust to the inevitable chaos and friction of war, to lose unforeseen events and confuse and overwhelm us. The perfect plan stems from a detailed analysis of a situation which allows us to decide on the best direction to follow, or the perfect position to occupy, and suggests several effective options, branches, to take depending on what the enemy throws at you. A plan with branches lets you outmaneuver your enemy because your responses to changing circumstances are faster and more rational. You see, if you've got options A, B, C, D, and your enemy takes B, and he is waiting for you in a field or on the streets, you can take the field. You can slow time down in that field so that he gets there first. Then panic sets in on the other side. Or you can speed up the tempo, rush through the field or the gardens to get there first and be prepared for him and surprise him. Secondly, give yourself room to maneuver. You cannot be mobile. You cannot maneuver freely if you put yourself in cramped spaces. Tight corners spell the end of mortality. They cramp you down. Consider the ability to move and keep open more options than the enemy has, and more important than holding territories or possessions. You see, space the enemy can hold. Let them take land. Time is more important. You will recover that land when the time comes. Time is precious. Even in prison, you have time. Time is on your side. You can still use time to a certain degree. But space, if you lose space, it does not matter. You can recapture that. Let them take the land. You will recapture that at a later time. This means not burdening yourself with commitments that will limit your options. The need of space is psychological as well as physical. You must have unfettered mind to create anything worthwhile. Create maximum disorder. Your enemy depends on being able to read you, to get some sense of your intentions. The goal of your maneuver should be to make that impossible, to send the enemy on a wild goose chase for meaningless information, to create ambiguity as to which way you are going to jump. The more you break down people's ability to reason about you, the more disorder you inject into their system. The disorder you create is controlled, strategic, and purposeful, at least for you. The disorder the enemy suffers is debilitating and destructive. So, to win 100 victories is to win 100 battles, is not the highest excellence. No, the highest excellence is to subdue the enemy's army without fighting at all. The art of fighting is not fighting. Sun Tzu, 4th century BC. My thanks to Robert Greene for these strategies. Tale of the Hunted Man. 2011, the man is being hunted by 200 cutthroats through the gardens. Now he has these agents of the sirens have sang to these GP medical agents that have arrived at this medical center. They are a facade. Now they await this hunted man on the street, one in particular, as he returns from a hunted witch hunt, He's being spat at. He's being noosed, encircled by ever-tightening noose effect of walking zombies. They're encircling him. They pop out the bush. They arrive from different angles, as if they're just appearing from nowhere. These machines of menace start to hunt him down. A convoy, a circus of Circe, suddenly is on the streets. He's being hunted now by the public, by everybody. Now the medical, now the sirens, the medical world. They have polluted this satanic one or two stirs of ill will, have polluted the whole system, the whole of people's mindsets, satanic world in which we live, a witch hunt for one man. He maneuvers them, artfully though, into positions of weakness. But this medical agent, this siren's agent, suddenly labels him as imagining the whole scenario as a delusional, a psychopath that's causing trouble for the whole world, that has created this in some sort of fantasy and acted it out. And now he's a conspirator, a delusional conspirator, where he conspirates and everyone's hunting him. He is now hunting the whole world in her eyes, this agent. Hunted man now finds himself hunted more and more through the fields by this dark community of Hades, an underworld of undesirables, walking zombies. Sirens now get in on the act. They're hunting. Where's the saints? This man asks. He has no saints by him. The saints are not there. He calls upon the gods to come. The saints he orders to arrive, but they do not come. The hunted man